We start with our interview segment and put the focus on three questions that will appear on the Missouri ballot this November. All three deal with making medical marijuana legal. Two are constitutional amendments. One's a proposition. What are the differences, if any? We'll get some thoughts from Jack Cardetti with New Approach Missouri. Jack, welcome to Ruckus. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Got to be confusing for voters when they go to the polls on November the 6th and see three questions all dealing with the same issue, medical marijuana and making it legal. Can you simplify this for us and tell us what the essential differences are?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really is incredible. The debate this year isn't so much whether or not Missouri will become the 31st state to have medical marijuana, but under which system they'll do it. There's three different propositions. Now, Amendment 2, which is what we support, is a fairly straightforward approach. It would have the Missouri Department of Health regulate the program, and there'd be a small 4% sales tax that would go towards veterans issues. Now, Prop C, which would be trumped if either of the constitutional amendments pass, that's another fairly straightforward approach. The biggest difference there is if it passes, the legislature could come back and void it, yeah, or change it. Amendment 3 is really sort of the outlier there. It is a much different approach to medical marijuana. It's backed by a single person, a personal injury attorney.
Brad Bradshaw.
Brad Bradshaw.
We know of Brad. He's run for office before.
Yeah, and if you've seen his billboards for his personal injury firm here in Kansas City, you're familiar with him. He would essentially put himself in charge of the program. He'd be a chair of a new, state agency that would oversee this, appoint the board members, and then he would also place a 15% sales tax on the sale of medical marijuana, which would be the largest in the nation.
Okay, let's say Amendment 2, the one you support, passes. What happens then?
Yeah, absolutely. And so Missouri will join 30 other states where a state licensed physician, an MD or DO, can work with a patient that had cancer, epilepsy, PTSD, or other debilitating issues, look at their different disease or illness and say, okay, we believe medical marijuana is an appropriate treatment option.
Will there be companies that spring up providing medical marijuana?
So yeah, all of that will be through the Missouri Department of Health. An existing state agency will license this. All of it has to be produced in the state. We have to be sold at a licensed dispensary. All of that will be highly regulated by the Missouri Department of Health.
Do we know that medical marijuana actually helps cure any diseases?
Yeah, we know that medical marijuana has some real benefits. When you look at cancer, someone that has nausea, somebody that it helps with appetite, it helps with sleep. So it really can bring a lot of relief to patients. But even more, the other thing that really helps is when you look at what it does to opioid abuse.
Doesn't it do a lot for pain relief? If you're in severe pain, medical marijuana helps ease that pain?
Yeah, severe pain, chronic pain is one of the best things that medical marijuana is for. And the thing is, right now, physicians, when someone's in pain, their real only option is to prescribe opioids. And we know that opioids have some level of addiction that go with them. And so what the Journal of American Medicine has found in a study just out this May is when states implement a medical marijuana law, opioid prescriptions actually go down. We think that that's good for society.
You mentioned there are 30-some states that have legalized medical marijuana. The federal government has not legalized it.
That is, you're
How does that happen?
Right. You're absolutely right. Like a lot of things, D.C. has not gotten with the times. D.C. has not led on this issue. As a result, the states have picked it up. If you look at just this summer, the state of Oklahoma, medical marijuana was on the ballot. It passed there. In the 2016 election cycle, it was on the ballot in those liberal bastions of North Dakota, Arkansas, and Florida, where it needed 60% of the vote. It passed in all of them.
Jack, you're known throughout Missouri as a Democratic consultant, a very successful one, I might add. Is this a measure that is backed by Democrats exclusively and by liberals?
Absolutely not. In fact, there's a bipartisan coalition of veterans and patients and doctors that back this. And for a little proof of that, look no further than the Joplin Globe. In the most conservative part of the state, they came out and endorsed Amendment 2 just this week. In fact, some of our most fervent supporters here are very libertarians. They're Trump supporters that don't believe that the government ought to be coming between a doctor and a patient.
I think I saw in one of the documents about your organization that you have the ACLU on the left, essentially, and the Tea Party on the right, both in support of Amendment 2 and medical marijuana.
Absolutely. They're both sticking up for patients here. We love that coalition. When I leave the show today, we'll actually go to announce that the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, that don't get involved in many political issues, are coming out in support of Amendment 2.
Jack, pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. That is Jack Cardetti with New Approach Missouri. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus.